Story 1. The Librarian Who Waited. A stranger knew my name, but I'd never met them. It happened on a gray, rainy Thursday, one of those days where the sky feels too heavy to breathe under, and the wind carries more than just the cold. I had missed my bus by mere seconds and, soaked and shivering, wandered aimlessly through a neighborhood I didn't recognize. That's when I saw it. Tucked between two abandoned storefronts was a narrow, ivy-covered archway. Above it, a carved wooden sign creaked softly in the rain. Eldridge Memorial Library since 1893. I blinked. I'd lived in this town my whole life and passed this street dozens of times. I was sure it had never been there. Drawn by the warm flicker of candle-like light inside, I stepped through the heavy wooden door. The instant I did, everything shifted. The air grew still, dense like velvet. The musty scent of aged paper, ink, and old oak filled my lungs. Time felt slower. Inside, rows of towering shelves stretched into dimness. Every step echoed as though I were walking inside a memory. At the front desk, a frail woman with silver hair tied in a neat bun looked up and smiled gently. "Welcome back, Alina." My heart skipped. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" "Welcome back," she repeated. "We were wondering when you'd return." She reached beneath the desk and pulled out a dusty, leather-bound book. It looked ancient, edges frayed, spine cracked, and a strange symbol engraved on its front. Then I saw it. My name. Alina Noor, etched in faded golden letters. A chill ran down my back. I've never been here before. How do you know my name?" She didn't reply. Instead, she slid the book toward me, eyes soft with something like nostalgia, pity. "You left this behind last time. You'll want to finish reading it." With trembling fingers, I opened it. What I saw inside made my breath catch. It was a journal. My journal, but not one I remembered ever owning or writing in. Still, every page bled familiarity. Childhood fears I had never shared with anyone. A recurring dream about drowning in a lake I'd never visited, but had painted once, without understanding why. A line from my 5th grade diary. What if this version of me isn't the only one? Then I turned to the last written page. The handwriting matched mine. If you're reading this, it means the loop isn't broken yet. She's still waiting for you to remember. Don't look away, don't forget again. Suddenly aware of the quiet, I looked up. The desk was empty. The chair was slowly spinning, as if someone had stood up just moments ago. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed, swallowed by the hush. I rushed to the door, journal clutched tightly in my hands. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky was still a pale, colorless gray. I turned around. The library was gone. Where it stood was just an empty, overgrown lot, no archway, no shelves, no sign, only a patch of wet grass and a lingering scent of burnt wood. I stood there for what felt like hours, the book still in my hands, damp pages fluttering in the wind. No one I told believed me. My phone had no photos, no GPS logs, nothing. But the journal was real, and sometimes, when I open it, new entries appear. In my handwriting, telling me about places I've never been, warning me of things I haven't done yet, and reminding me, don't forget her. Story 2. The Train Passenger. A stranger knew my name, but I'd never met them. It was one of those train rides where the world outside feels like a fading dream, dark fields, blurred trees, and the rhythmic lull of wheels grinding over tracks. I was traveling from Lahore to Karachi, a 12-hour journey I had taken many times before, but something about that night felt off from the start. The compartment was nearly empty. A few passengers dozed under dim yellow lights. I had the window seat, and the fog made everything outside look like we were passing through another world. I scrolled aimlessly through my phone, trying to stay awake, trying not to think. That's when he sat beside me. An old man, wrinkled hands, dark coat, and a walking stick that looked older than him. I hadn't seen him board the train. He didn't look at me at first, just stared ahead, lost in thought. Minutes passed in silence. I assumed he was just another weary traveler. Until, suddenly, he turned his head and said softly, "You shouldn't ignore the letter from Saeed. He didn't mean to hurt you." My hands froze. My phone slipped from my grip and landed silently on the carpeted floor. How could he possibly know? That letter. Only 2 people had ever read it. Me and Saeed. And Saeed had died 2 years ago. In an accident. A stupid, meaningless accident. Or maybe something worse. I never knew for sure. I never got closure. "I'm sorry. What did you just say?" I managed, heart pounding. The man slowly looked at me. His eyes weren't threatening. They were full of something else, recognition and regret. "You told me this story in another life," he said, with a tired smile. "What are you talking about? Do I know you?" He paused, as if struggling to remember something deeply buried. Then, almost to himself, he whispered, "You asked me what forgiveness feels like. I told you it feels like forgetting, but only when you're ready." The train began to slow. We were approaching a small, barely lit station. The man stood, steadying himself with the cane. Before he stepped off, he looked over his shoulder. "Don't burn the truth twice, Beta. Once was enough." And then he was gone. I jumped up, ran to the doorway, and looked outside. The platform was empty. The fog had thickened. No sign of him. No exit in sight. Just a cold silence that didn't match the usual hustle of midnight stations. When I returned to my seat, something was resting where he had been. A folded piece of paper. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside was a perfect replica of the letter from Saeed, word for word, line for line. The one I had burned 2 years ago in my kitchen sink. At the bottom, there was one added sentence, written in handwriting I didn't recognize. "You didn't read the last page last time. Please do it now." There was a last page. One I never remembered seeing before. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't an apology. It was a goodbye. "I loved you more than I had the courage to admit. I ran because I thought I wasn't enough. But if somehow you're reading this after I'm gone, know this. You were always worth staying for. Saeed." The tears came before I could stop them. Silently. Heavily. The kind that only grief understands. I never saw the old man again. I asked the conductor, fellow passengers, even checked the CCTV logs when I got to Karachi. No record of him boarding. No passenger matching his description. But I kept the letter this time. Because whether that man was a stranger, a ghost, or a version of fate that wanted to give me peace, I'll never know. All I know is, Sometimes, the past rides the train with you, waiting to be forgiven. Story 3. Mirror Twin. A stranger knew my name, but I'd never met them. It began innocently, like most strange things do. I was killing time one lazy Saturday, wandering through an old bazaar on the edge of town, one of those forgotten places tucked behind crumbling walls and half-burnt signboards. A narrow shop caught my eye, hidden between a herbalist's stall and a record store that hadn't sold anything since the 90s. The sign above read, "Timelines and trinkets, antiques from every era." Inside, the shop was dim and cluttered. The air smelled like dust, rust, and secrets. Vintage clocks ticked out of sync. Porcelain dolls stared with cracked eyes, and books in languages I didn't recognize lay in uneven stacks. I was about to leave when I saw the mirror. It stood in the corner, tall, arched, and framed in dark wood that seemed to drink in the light. The glass shimmered faintly, as if remembering something. The shopkeeper, a hunched man with a voice like dried leaves, noticed me looking. "Ah, that one special," he croaked, "came from another timeline." I laughed awkwardly, assuming he was playing up the antique mystique. "Another timeline, huh? What does that even mean?" He didn't answer, just gave me a look that felt too long, too knowing. "You can take it," he said. "No charge. It chooses who it remembers." Creeped out but intrigued, I agreed. I told myself I'd clean it up and sell it online. A free vintage mirror. Why not? That night, after placing it in the corner of my bedroom, I stood in front of it brushing my hair. The lights flickered. Maybe a power surge. Maybe not. The mirror began to fog slightly, maybe from my breath, or maybe the room suddenly got colder. I leaned forward and wiped the glass with my sleeve, and noticed something was wrong. My reflection was delayed, just by a second, barely noticeable, but definitely real. I blinked. She blinked after me. I tilted my head. She followed too slowly. Then she smiled. I didn't. Goosebumps erupted across my arms. My stomach twisted. I stepped back in horror. That's when the reflection spoke. Not aloud, but from inside the glass. Her voice as if carried on a cold breath from somewhere deep. "Don't you remember me, Anaya?" I screamed and stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. My name. I hadn't told anyone my name, not the shopkeeper, not anyone in that store. The mirror version leaned closer, pressing a hand flat against the inside of the glass. Her eyes didn't blink now. They stared into me. "You left me here." Something in her face changed, subtly but horrifyingly. Her smile dropped into a look of betrayal. Her skin seemed to darken, stretch. She pressed harder against the mirror, as though trying to push through. I threw a bedsheet over it and shoved it into the basement, heart pounding, hands trembling. But it didn't end. At night, when the house is silent, I can hear whispers coming from below. Not loud, but constant. They call my name. Sometimes they weep. Sometimes they laugh in my voice. One time, I found the basement door wide open, the mirror uncovered, and my reflection smiling, even though I was crying. I tried to get rid of it, took it to the junkyard, dumped it under broken tiles and rotten wood. Next morning, it was back in my basement. No explanation. I haven't gone down there in weeks. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the real one. or if I left her behind long ago and now she wants her place back. Story 4. The Forgotten Photograph. A stranger knew my name, but I'd never met them. After my grandmother passed, the family asked me to stay behind for a few days to help clean her old house. It stood quietly at the edge of our ancestral village, the kind of place where time slowed, dust lingered like ghosts, and the silence had a weight to it. I'd always found the place oddly comforting and equally unsettling. One rainy afternoon, I was sorting through a stack of trunks in the attic, filled mostly with moth-eaten quilts, faded letters, and pressed flowers in brittle journals. That's when I found the box. An old wooden chest with a rusted latch and a musty lavender scent. Inside were hundreds of black and white photographs, weddings, birthdays, children playing barefoot in the fields. Most were yellowed and curling at the edges, but one photo in particular pulled the breath right out of me. It was a picture of a young woman standing in front of our house, the very same porch where I had played hide and seek as a child. She wore a modest dress, her hair parted exactly like mine. Even the way she stood, her slight tilt, her half smile, it was me. Exactly me. On the back, written in careful ink, Sana, age 22. That was my name. And I had just turned 22. I stared at it for a long time, convincing myself it must be some distant relative, some eerie family resemblance. But deep down, I felt something shift, a recognition beyond logic. That night over dinner, I showed it to my mother. The color drained from her face. "Where did you find this?" she whispered, her voice tight. "In Nani's attic," I said. "Who is she?" My mother didn't respond for a moment. Then she whispered, "She was never supposed to be found." "What do you mean?" "Burn it. Tonight. Don't look at it again. And don't ask anyone else." She got up from the table and left, leaving her food untouched. But I didn't burn it. Instead, I placed it back in the box and slid it under my bed. That night, I couldn't sleep. My room felt colder than usual. The wind outside had died, but I kept hearing soft, faint music, like an old gramophone playing a tune I didn't recognize, yet somehow knew. At 2:47 a.m., I sat up with a start. Something was playing, upstairs, from the attic. A soft waltz, scratchy, slow, filled with static, like it was coming from an old record. I hesitated, but then curiosity and a strange sense of pull got the better of me. Clutching a flashlight, I crept up the wooden stairs, each step creaking louder than the last. The attic door was slightly ajar. Inside, the light flickered. The air was freezing. And right in the center of the floor, perfectly placed where I hadn't left it, was the photograph. Only now, the girl in it was waving. Not a blur. Not a trick of the light. Her hand, my hand, was raised and frozen mid-motion, eyes locked directly at mine. Her smile had widened. I dropped the flashlight. Its beam spun across the attic, landing on something behind me. I turned slowly. There was another photo on the wall, larger this time, framed. Me again. Same girl. Only now, I was standing in front of a grave. My grave. It read, "Sana, beloved granddaughter, 1999 to 2021. But I was born in 2002. I screamed, bolted downstairs, and slammed the attic shut. The photo under my bed was gone. I told my mother everything. She broke down crying and said, "You had a twin, a stillborn. We never told you." Your nanny believed her soul never left. She always said one day she'd come back, looking for what was hers. I asked, trembling, "What do you mean hers?" She looked at me, tired, terrified. "Your life. I left the house that same week. But sometimes, when I look in the mirror, my reflection lingers a second too long. And once, just once, I saw her face in the reflection behind me. Still waving. Still waiting." Story 5. The Man in the Cafe. A stranger knew my name, but I'd never met them. The day started like any other. I was working from my usual spot at a quiet cafe downtown. Table by the window, black coffee going cold beside my laptop, a blank Word document mocking me with its blinking cursor. Outside, the city moved in its usual rhythm. Inside, lo-fi jazz hummed softly under the clinking of cups and the hiss of the espresso machine. It was a routine I found comfort in, mundane, predictable. Until it wasn't. I noticed him before he approached me, a man in a gray suit, hair slightly disheveled, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. He wasn't out of place, but something about him felt off, like he didn't quite belong to the moment. He stopped at my table. I looked up, assuming he needed directions or had mistaken me for someone else. But he smiled, tired, familiar. "Farhan, you made it." I blinked. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" He sat down without asking, leaned in slightly. "I wasn't sure this timeline would work," he said. There was no hesitation in his voice, just calm certainty. "You don't know me yet," he continued, "but in another version of your life. You saved me." I stared, unsure whether to laugh, call for help, or listen. Then he pulled something from his coat, a small, folded note. The paper was worn, edges curled as if it had traveled a long way, maybe through pockets or time. He placed it gently on the table and stood. "I don't have much time. Just read it. And trust your instinct like you always do." With that, he turned and walked out. Gone. Just like that. I sat in stunned silence, the note untouched for a moment. Then I opened it. "On June 18th, don't get on the plane. F." I stared at the words, waiting for them to make sense. But they didn't. I had no flights booked, no travel plans, nothing even penciled in for that day. Confused and slightly unnerved, I tossed the note in my bag and got back to work, chalking it up to a prank or an eccentric stranger with a screw loose. Days passed. I forgot about it. Until a week later, my boss called me in for a quick meeting. "Farhan, we need you in Islamabad for the client pitch," he said. "You're flying out on the 18th. I froze. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied, just a little surprised. That night, I found the note again, reread it a dozen times. My hands shook, my mind raced. I kept trying to rationalize it, but something deep and instinctual urged me not to ignore it. The next morning, I refused the flight, gave an excuse, took the heat. My boss was furious, but he let me skip it. June 18th. The plane I was supposed to be on crashed just outside Rawalpindi. 127 passengers. No survivors. I stared at the news article for hours, my name echoing in the silence of my own thoughts. not on the list, but almost. I told the police. I told my family. I even told a close friend. No one believed me. No one remembered the man in the cafe. The CCTV footage had corrupted files that day, conveniently. The staff said they didn't recall anyone fitting the description. But I knew, and every so often, I'd return to the cafe, sit in the same chair by the window, hoping to see him again. Sometimes, when the place is half empty and the light hits just right, I swear I do. A glimpse of him, sitting 2 tables away, watching, waiting. And I wonder how many other versions of me didn't listen. Story 6. The stranger at the funeral. The stranger knew my name, but I'd never met them. The air was thick with incense and grief. My uncle's funeral was quiet, too quiet. People whispered softly, shared hushed condolences, but none of it felt real. The man who had once taught me how to ride a bike, who made the world ledder with his laughter, now lay still beneath white cloth and rose petals. I stood at the edge of the graveyard, away from the murmuring crowd, watching the burial from a distance. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the trees. I could feel the weight of something heavy, but not just sorrow. Something else. Something. Watching. That's when I noticed her. A woman in a black veil, dressed in outdated mourning clothes, hands trembling at her sides. She stood so close I should have heard her approach, but I didn't. She felt like she had always been standing there. She spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Zoya, you shouldn't have let him go alone that night." I turned sharply. "Excuse me? How do you know my name?" She slowly lifted her veil. My breath caught in my throat. It was me. Older, tired, eyes haunted with years I hadn't yet lived. Same birthmark above the lip. Same broken front tooth from falling off a swing when I was 8. It was like looking into a mirror warped by time. "I don't understand," I said, stepping back. She stared at me with a kind of sorrow only guilt can shape. "You were supposed to stop him, but you chose the wrong path." Again, I reached out instinctively, desperate for answers. But in that split second, she turned and disappeared into the crowd. I pushed through mourners, scanning every face. She was gone, like smoke, like a memory you're sure you had but can never place. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind played her words over and over. "You shouldn't have let him go alone. You chose the wrong path." Again. But what did she mean? That's when the dream came. A road I'd never seen before. A narrow, fog-covered highway winding through a pine forest. I stood at a crossroads. One sign pointed toward Murray Hill Bypass. The other was blank. In the distance, I saw my uncle's car, swerving, headlights flickering, brakes failing. Then, crash. Metal against stone. A deafening silence. I woke up gasping. The next day, I asked my mother which route my uncle had taken that night. She'd looked surprised. "He took a shortcut through the Murray Bypass. It was strange. He never drives that way." That road from my dream, it was real, but I had never been there. The next week, I found an old photograph in the back of a drawer in Nani's room. In it, there was a girl standing next to my uncle at what looked like a family picnic. She looked like me, not just similar, identical, but older. On the back, in faded handwriting, "Zoya, the one who stayed behind. I still don't know what that means. Sometimes, I wonder if she was from another timeline. One where she made the right choice. One where he lived. But now I carry that guilt. Because in this version of reality, I didn't stop him. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't supposed to. Story 7. The voice from the vlog. A stranger knew my name, but I'd never met them. It started on a slow Sunday evening. You know the kind, when time feels heavy and meaningless, and you're spiraling through random YouTube videos with nothing but algorithms and curiosity guiding your clicks. I was deep in the rabbit hole of urban exploration content. Crumbling mansions, long abandoned asylums, forgotten towns swallowed by nature. I wasn't even subscribed to the channel that posted it, but the title caught my eye. Abandoned Village Exploration, Uncut Footage Disturbing. It was uploaded by a mid-tier travel vlogger named Explore with Dan, someone known more for cliff diving and food reviews than creepy content. That made it feel more real. The setting was eerie, a mist-covered village, reportedly cursed and left untouched since the 1980s after a mysterious mass disappearance. The kind of clickbait story you don't really believe, until you do. About 7 minutes into the video, the cameraman entered a collapsed brick house. The walls were covered in graffiti, most of it illegible or in some regional dialect. But then, the camera paused. It zoomed in on a cracked section of the wall. Written in red spray paint, in all capital letters. Don't trust her, Arib. I dropped my phone. That's my name, Arib, and it's not exactly common. At first, I thought maybe it was a prank or coincidence. Maybe the vlogger was doing some kind of ARG alternate reality game. But what happened next made my blood freeze. The voice behind the camera read it aloud, confused. Don't trust her, Arib. Who the hell is Arib? His tone was casual. He didn't know what he had found. I rewound it. Again and again. My name. Clear as day. Spoken by someone thousands of miles away, who had never heard of me. I paused the video, went to the channel, and emailed them. Politely. Then desperately. Hi. This may sound strange, but my name is Arib. I just saw your video. Can you tell me more about the village? The graffiti? How did you find it? No reply. 2 days later, the video was gone. Removed without a trace. No archive. No explanation. The uploader hadn't posted since. His entire channel went dark. My unease grew. So I did some digging. The village was in rural Georgia, the country, not the US. I'd never been there. Never even been near Europe. Yet somehow, my name was etched on a wall halfway across the world, in a video now vanished from existence. I tried convincing myself it was a coincidence. Maybe another Arib. Maybe fake. But that illusion shattered a week later. I was reorganizing my room, moving my wardrobe for the first time in months. Behind it, carved faintly, not in paint, but scratched deep into the wood, was the same message. Don't trust her, Arib. Same handwriting. Same spacing. But no one had been in my room except me. And I never scratched that message. I fell to the floor, shaking, staring. I checked the window, the door, the walls. Every lock was intact. No sign of a break-in. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing a faint static, like the beginning of a video loading. At 3:11 a.m., my phone lit up by itself. A notification. Explore with Dan is live. But the channel was gone. Deleted. I clicked the link anyway. The screen flickered, then showed a dimly lit room with a camera pointed at an open door. No sound, just a low hum, almost like breathing. In the shadowed doorway, a woman stood still. She had her back to the camera, long hair, pale hands twitching. Suddenly, she turned. She looked exactly like my ex, the one I stopped trusting, the one who vanished. And in that moment, she whispered, "He's still watching, Arib, but you didn't listen last time." Then the stream ended. Now, every time I try to watch anything on YouTube, I see brief flickers, frames of that village, that room, her face. And sometimes, when I close my laptop, I hear her whisper through the screen, "Don't trust her, Arib." Story 8. The Repeating Dream. A stranger knew my name, but I'd never met them. It started subtly, just fragments at first. A hallway. Fluorescent lights flickering above. The smell of antiseptic and old blood. The echo of footsteps that weren't mine. Then the voice. Every single time, it was the same. A whisper in my ear, just before waking. "Wake up, Rehan. This reality isn't real." I would jolt awake, drenched in sweat, my heart hammering like I'd run a marathon. The clock always read 3:33 a.m., no matter when I fell asleep. At first, I brushed it off as stress. Work was overwhelming, my sleep schedule was wrecked, and my mind felt like it was constantly buffering. But the dream kept coming, exactly the same every night. The corridor was always the same length, the same buzzing light, the same slow push of a gurney disappearing around the corner. And the man in scrubs, he never aged, never changed. Just stood there at the end, half-shadowed, whispering those words. I tried everything. Sleeping pills, meditation, leaving the lights on, skipping sleep altogether. But the dream always found me, and it was starting to feel more real than the day. Then one ordinary Tuesday, everything snapped. I was in the office elevator, alone, scrolling through my phone like usual. Half asleep, barely aware. The lights flickered, the elevator trembled slightly. Then, blackness. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in a hospital bed. A real one. Everything smelled too sharp, sterile. My arms felt numb. My head throbbed. Machines beeped softly around me. My vision was blurry. But when I looked to my right, I saw him. The man in scrubs. Exactly as he had appeared in every single dream. Calm, focused, familiar. He was adjusting in 4 in my arm, not surprised to see me awake. "Finally," he said, "took you long enough. You glitched deeper than we thought." "What? What do you mean?" I tried to say, but my mouth wouldn't move. Panic set in. I tried to lift my arms. Nothing. I tried to scream. Silence. He leaned closer. His voice was low, deliberate. "You're in the dream right now, Rehan. You never woke up. You think this is real?" He tapped my forehead with 2 fingers. "Try again." Suddenly, I gasped. I woke up in my bed, covered in sweat. The digital clock flashed 3:33 a.m. again. But this time, the walls looked a little off. My fan spun the opposite direction. My phone wallpaper had changed. My dog, who'd been dead for 2 years, was sleeping beside the bed. I panicked. I ran to the mirror. My reflection blinked a second after I did. My heart dropped. Was I still dreaming? The next day, I walked through the city dazed. Things didn't feel right. Buildings had new names. People I knew didn't recognize me. My own mother called me Amir by mistake, and then swore she'd always called me that. I tried pinching myself. I tried staying awake for 48 hours. I tried therapy. Nothing worked. Now, I don't sleep by choice. Because when I dream, I wake up somewhere else. And every version feels a little less real than the last. And sometimes I see him in reflections, behind windows, in crowds. Always watching. Always whispering. Not yet, Rehan, keep trying. But I'm tired. I don't know if I'm still sleeping, or if I ever actually lived at all. Story 9. The Duplicate Account. A stranger knew my name, but I'd never met them. It started as just another notification. A friend request on Facebook from someone with my exact name, exact profile picture, and eerily similar bio. The image was the same one I'd uploaded last week during a family trip. Same smile, same background, same filter. At first, I assumed it was a glitch or someone playing a dumb prank. But the page looked authentic. No visible edits, no typos. It was a near-perfect clone. Except, they'd posted photos I never remembered taking. In one, I was at a bookstore I'd never visited, wearing a leather jacket I didn't own. In another, I was at a beach I'd never been to, laughing with strangers whose faces looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place them. Curious and a little unnerved, I messaged them. Me. Hey, why are you using my profile? They replied instantly. Dumb. Because I am you. The version you don't remember. The one you left behind. I stared at the screen. Me. What are you talking about? Dumb. I remember everything you forgot. The scholarship. The night you didn't say goodbye to your father. The drawing you tore up and hid under your bed. The number you dialed and hung up on. I remember all of it. My heart dropped. Some of it I hadn't told anyone. And one thing, they mentioned something I had written in a private paper diary when I was 15. A single, personal line I'd forgotten myself until now. I don't think this version of me will ever be enough. I typed with shaking hands. Me. Who are you? Dumb. I'm the version of you that didn't take the scholarship. The one who stayed back. The one who made different choices. We used to be one. I blocked them immediately, adrenaline rushing through me like fire. I tried to report the account, but it had vanished from Facebook. Deleted, no trace. Not even cached. I convinced myself it was a very elaborate hoax. Maybe someone hacked into my cloud storage, or a twisted friend thought this was funny. But I changed all my passwords, locked every device, factory reset my phone. The next morning, I woke to find a letter at my door. No name, no address, no stamp. Inside was a single photograph. Me, standing in front of an old white cottage I had never seen before, wearing clothes I'd never owned, surrounded by people I didn't know, but who looked warm, familiar, like they'd known me for years. And I was smiling. A deep, relaxed smile I hadn't seen on my face in ages. On the back of the photo, scrawled in faint ink, You left this version behind. But he remembers you. I tried to trace the letter. No luck. I called my parents, asked them strange questions like, did I ever forget something important in 2017? They thought I was joking. My mother laughed nervously. But then, she paused. There was a night, she said slowly. You called me from your dorm room. You were crying, and then you hung up. You never mentioned it again. Do you remember? I didn't. That night, I found my old journal from high school. Flipping through pages, one entry was scribbled out in thick red pen. I don't remember writing it, but underneath the ink, I could still make out the words. If there are infinite versions of me, maybe one of them is truly happy. Maybe I owe him something. Now, I keep the photo in a drawer. I don't look at it often. But sometimes I get emails from addresses that don't exist. And once, just once, I saw a man walk by my window. He looked exactly like me, but calmer, lighter. And for a moment, I swear I saw him mouth the words. Come back. Story 10. The Time Loop Note. A stranger knew my name, but I'd never met them. It started 2 weeks ago, maybe 3. I'm not even sure anymore. One morning, I woke up groggy, eyes half shut, dragging myself toward the bathroom. And that's when I saw it. A small yellow sticky note on the corner of my mirror. Hey Samir, don't go near the basement today. I stood there, toothbrush in hand, just staring. It was written in my own handwriting, but I hadn't written it. At first, I assumed I was sleepwalking. Maybe I had jotted it down during some weird dream. I shrugged it off. But the next morning, there was another note. Avoid the third step. The day after that. Don't answer the knock at 2:17 a.m. Each one simple, specific, and chilling. It became a pattern. Every morning, a new note appeared on the mirror. Always the same yellow pad. Always the same pen. Always written by me. Then came the one that made my blood run cold. Tell your sister to stay home. I live alone. I haven't had family in this city for years. My sister, Amina, died when we were kids, something I still can't talk about without shaking. That day, I didn't go to work. I unplugged everything. Searched my apartment from top to bottom. Every drawer. Every inch of the mirror. The door was locked from the inside. No sign of entry. I bought a night vision camera and mounted it in the bedroom, pointing directly at the mirror. I set the recording to start at midnight. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept watching the hallway from my bed, expecting something, anything, to move. The next morning, I woke up and rushed to the mirror. A new note. The camera won't help. It never does. Heart pounding. I opened the footage. Everything was normal until 3:13 a.m. Then the footage glitched. A loud static burst. The screen turned to black and green noise. The timestamp froze. And when it resumed, the note was already on the mirror. I rewound it 5 times. Always the same glitch. Always 3:13 a.m. I was losing my mind. So I left a note of my own. Who are you? I stuck it right there on the mirror before going to sleep. It felt stupid, desperate. But in the morning, my note was gone. In its place, scrawled in larger handwriting, I'm you, and you've asked that 47 times already. That day, I didn't leave the house. I didn't turn on any lights. I sat in the kitchen with a knife in one hand and my phone in the other, waiting for something to break the silence. Nothing came. But that night, I had a dream. I was in the basement, the one I never use. Dust everywhere. A single bulb flickering. On the wall, dozens of yellow sticky notes, all identical. All saying, "This time listen." At the far end of the room, I saw myself, or someone who looked exactly like me. Only, he was burned, scarred, trembling. He pointed to the mirror in his hand, shattered and blackened. And he whispered, "You didn't burn it." Again, I woke up screaming. This morning's note was already on the mirror. Just one sentence. Final warning. Burn the mirror. Now I'm sitting here, lighter in one hand, mirror cleaner in the other, heart racing. And I don't know what's worse, burning the mirror and finding out what happens next, or not burning it and living through the same loop again tomorrow.